All right, I'm Raniel,
I'm Duran.
and today we're going to demonstrate client-side template injection. And the last episode, we demonstrated server-side template injection. And in this case, client-side template injection happens because you're mixing server-side rendering with client-side rendering. So what we're going to do today is we're going to implement, since this is client-side, we're going to try to pop an alert box in order to maybe session hijack, maybe get a shell or access the user's browser, stuff like that. There's a lot of different things you can do with this, but basically it's just cross-site scripting injected into a template. So, Duran, I would like to ask you before we start the demo or actually start reviewing the code, how would you describe the difference between client-side and server-side?
It's easy. So client side is actually going to operate on the user's browser, whereas server side is going to operate on the server. Now, why that's important is if I'm attacking the client, then I generally want it to be client side. If my goal is to attack the server and or all of the users, server side is best. One of the great things is server side tends to yield a higher rating. The reason why it has a higher risk rating is because instead of impacting a user, I'm impacting the back end system, the back end server, and that means I can impact all users. With the client side, maybe it only hits one user, maybe it hits some of the users, but I can't access that data on the server. I can only access the data on the client. So it really depends on what you're after. It could very well be that you want to get into an internal network and this server sits on, maybe it's up in the cloud, so it's in a public environment. And yes, it might be isolated to only internal users, but since it's in the cloud, be it AWS, Azure, Google, or one of the other private cloud providers, you don't benefit from compromising it the same way because you're not actually in the organization's boundary. So if I instead leverage a client-side attack, the rating on that one would actually be high because now I can pivot from whatever clients I manage to get into to attack deep inside of their network. Whereas if I just stayed server side, since it's in the cloud, while I could pull all the data I wanted from that server, and maybe I could use it to launch further attacks, it's much easier in this case to attack their internal network using the clients by compromising the clients instead of compromising the servers. So it's always a question of where your ultimate goal is and where whatever you're attacking happens to sit within that.
How common do you see client-side template injection when you're doing penetration testing? Is it an often or is it very little now? Just let me down. I remember at one point, like maybe a couple of years ago, this was like a common thing. You'll see people being able to do template injection, but I see it every now and then.
Yeah, it's not as common as it was when it originally came out. I think a lot of people, a lot of developers, when these template languages really took off, they didn't quite understand what it is they were working with. And a lot of this goes back to what we talked about previously, where we talked about the backtick and the meaning of the backtick $ with curly brackets and things of that nature. And that was intended purposely to match these template languages. So developers didn't realize what they had, and they didn't realize the power and dangers that came with what was available to them. Especially since most developers initially thought that these template languages would protect against these kinds of things, that they would protect against all cross-site scripting. And so it would be this perfect environment where it was impossible to screw up. I mean, you've been in this long enough. I have yet to see a perfect language.
No, there's no perfect language. But most people will tell you that Java's the perfect language, or maybe Perl, but no.
I don't know.
There
All
is.
the old school people still say C and C++.
I mean, look, like, don't get me wrong, I love C, but no. I mean, with all the things you need to know in order, and that's probably why people go to Python, because they think they're, even though they say this, they have things that are close to C in there, there's not even catching up to the speed
No.
of C. But still, most people don't understand things, so they move away from it. And to be good at writing C, you literally need to understand the machine. You literally need to know a low level, and if you don't understand that, you're fucking up, you're screwing up shit. So it's one of the better languages, but one of the harder languages to really fully understand if you don't understand the concepts, to me. Yeah, so there's really no perfect language. And my other question for you, Duran, is why is this necessary for people to learn anyway? Do you think this is even necessary for people to learn? Because a lot of people don't know this. And then when they come up to something that's older or legacy, then they're trying to figure out how to do this. So do you think this is an thing that people should know? I mean, it's probably the wrong question, because everybody should know something, but do you think it's really valuable for people to know? Still.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I think the most important thing is actually to take lessons from all of the vulnerabilities that have come so far, because I haven't seen a single vulnerability go extinct. Buffer overflows still exist, even in fully managed languages like Python and Java, C#, fully managed, because they don't fully manage. So you still have buffer overflows, and we're talking almost 30 years since they were proven to be a vulnerability that is trivially exploitable. I don't know of a vulnerability that's disappeared. Cross-site scripting, SQL injection. In fact, really all we see are instances of the same thing over and over again. History rhyming, as Mark Twain put it. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. That's the case with vulnerabilities. You should understand this for the same reason you should understand all vulnerabilities, because it hasn't gone away and it's not going to go away. The most that's going to happen is you'll see people do it less often because they're made aware of it, but these things ebb and flow. Like with anything, SQL injection was the flavor of the month for a good long time. And so you saw development teams put a fair bit of effort in preventing that with mixed success. Well, that's fallen off the radar. And so you've seen the resurgence in SQL injection. And NoSQL injection, immediately the second NoSQL came up, all these development teams were doing the same mistake they made with SQL, just with NoSQL now. So the point being, yes, I think you should, from the perspective of you always need to understand how these work, because it's the same vulnerability. It's cross-site scripting is really all it is. It's code injection.
Exactly what I was going to say. It's injection.
And cross-site scripting is just code injection. It's client-side code injection. You are inject and it doesn't have to be JavaScript. This may knock people's socks off, especially younger folks who have mostly dealt with JavaScript, but there are other client-side languages.
Yep, there are a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And just particularly, we're doing this because a lot of the stuff that people are using, especially for front end, are JS. But there's a lot of different frameworks that still have some type of injection.
Yeah.
So, but we will be going over different stuff. But right now, we're working on NodeJS. So let's deep dive into the code. So right here, we're going to go and we're going to require all of the things we need, which is Express. We're using Helmet to set up our content security policies. We're going to set our paths, and we're also going to escape HTML. Here, probably didn't really need this, but I am setting my paths for CSS and JavaScript and jQuery. Then here, I'm also going to use set up my content security policy, set it to false because I don't really need it. I don't want it to stop anything, but if I turn that on, it probably would catch some things set into my security policy. But in this case, we don't need it. So we're going to go down to our request. So we're going to do app.get. We're going to get a request and a response. And here we're going to set the content header, which is going to be text, HTML. Then we're going to set our parameter, which is the name parameter. And here, as you can see, we're not doing any validation. All right. So we're going to get the status, and in the status, we're going to send our HTML, and it's going to also embed or render our client-side template. So here, as you can see, this is just a little bootstrap, something to make it look good. Here's where we do all of the stuff here. It's where we say hello, and we're going to get the name, which is going to come from this name parameter, which is not being validated. It's going to be rendered from inside of the template. So here we're going to be escaping HTML, and we also call the view.js, and I think this is using 2.5.13, which is actually vulnerable. And then in the script, we're going to call new view, and then we're going to call app. So we're going to basically reference app. So here we have a simple UI. So let's go to the name parameter. And let's put Ranyo. Just going to say hello, Ranyo, right? So here, let's see if we can see if this, which we know it is, but let's do our test to see if it's injectable. And yes, it actually, it basically ran our expression. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to call our constructors. We're basically going to inject code into this parameter, and we're going to see if we can pop an alert box and see if it will give us an alert box with pretty much cross-site scripting, embedding that inside of JavaScript by calling it do code. Boom, there we go.
One of the important things to note is so long as that pop-up remains in effect, it's effectively frozen the client-side interpretation, and that's why we see the payload in there and why it looks reflected. The second we hit OK, that, so to speak, unpauses the thread and away it goes.
And let's just see, we can do other things, and we'll go over other ways to attack this, but just want to see if it's actually this to this domain. That's something good to check. Normally I do this just to check because it may not actually be. Sometimes I've had times to run where I've actually, when I was testing for cross-site scripting and I would try to attack a domain, it wouldn't actually be towards that domain, it would be to another domain, and it wouldn't be in scope. So it's good to check. And how this would actually work in the real world for an attacker, which a lot of people don't know. A lot of the times an attacker would not pop up an alert box. They would either try to get a reverse shell, or they would try to make it hidden so you wouldn't be able to see it. So it wouldn't be an alert box. And I wouldn't do this because it would make it obvious to the user that I'm doing something is going on here. So a lot of people don't understand that or don't know that, especially in the realm of the pen testing field. They think that the things that we're doing is what an attacker would really do. They would not do that. That would really make it suspicious. But however, this is how easy it is to inject do template injection, inject something like cross-site scripting, or you can do more things here. It doesn't have to be just cross-site scripting. You can do a lot of things here since you have code injection here. You can literally disguise the limit. But this is just how easy it is to do code injection by, from the client side. So, Duran, do you have anything to add here?
Only a reminder, like we talked about previously, in this particular case, remember what we're discussing, the language we're speaking is JavaScript. And so everything in there, if you know JavaScript, and especially since it has jQuery loaded, then you should be able to guess all of the tremendous things you could do, how you could use this to use AJAX calls that will send over session data, send over cookie data, how you could use this to grab OAuth tokens and anything else. The sky's the limit, so long as you understand the way the language that you have to talk is.
Yep. And that goes with any different language. So as long as you understand it, you can, the sky's the limit. So this concludes our episode today for client-side template injection. I'm Raniel.
I'm Duran.
And if you would like more episodes like this one, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more episodes like this. And also email us. Let us know down in the comment section things you would like to see us demo. And until the next time.
Have fun.